herd of deer. Or a number of deer, I should say. They're absolutely beautiful. If you are venturing out into the forest or out into the wild, you need to learn and use a basic form of navigation. So today we're going to be going over that, so stick around. What we're going to need for this exercise, first and foremost, is going to be a good quality compass, such as this one. And this is the Sun2 MC2 base plate compass with a mirror. People ask me a lot, why do I use these types of compasses instead of just a regular plate compass like you'd use with a topo map? There's features in this compass that I really like that make my situation out here in the backcountry a lot easier. For instance, with this mirror, when I shoot a bearing, I'm able to capture a more accurate azimuth. If I'm, or when I'm, shooting a bearing from one fixed object to another, this allows me to get that better accuracy. Another feature it has I really like is it has adjustable declination. If you're using this with a topo, you can simply adjust that little screw in the back, inputting your declination into the compass and leaving it there for that trip until you go move on to the next area. Okay, and a couple of features on the compass you want to get familiar with before you start doing this is the hollow needle inside the compass we're going to refer to as the shed or the doghouse. Then your needle that points north, the one that moves, you're going to refer to that as red. So you're going to hear me refer or say, put red in the shed throughout the video. That's what that means, is you're going to line those two up. All right, with the compass, you're going to need a handful of other tools to make this happen. One thing, you're going to need a set of Ranger style or pace beads like you see here. And this is used for measurement or to measure distance traveled. We're going to be using this with a pace count, and we'll demonstrate how to establish that here in a few minutes. But for every 100 meters I travel on the ground, I drop one of these on the bottom. And I keep dropping them every 100 meters until I get to 900 meters. Once I get to 1,000, I move these back up, and one of the four, or the bottom one on the four, I drop that down. That's 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer. With that, you're also going to need, and I recommend a waterproof notebook such as this to log down your bearings, your azimuth, and your pace count. So you're keeping track of where you went and how far you went. You're going to need a handful of cordage, something to write with, in this case a mechanical pencil, a measuring device, and I've got a couple. I brought this today just for the sake of the video, but a way to measure the distance traveled. You're going to need a handful of stakes, and in this case, I believe these are chopsticks I picked up at a thrift store for next to nothing. Excuse me, guys. But you're going to see how all of this works toward the end of the video when we put our map together on the ground. All right, let's go over how to determine a pace count. You're going to need a flat area of land and some way to measure off 100 meters. And this is what I picked up. This is, I use this for my classes. But this is a cheap Harbor Freight tape measure, and this is 100 meter or 330 feet measuring tape. So I'll go ahead and mark off a 100 meter area, and we'll go from there. All right, now that I got that 100 meter area measured off, I'm going to go ahead and establish my pace count. And if you're not familiar with how to establish a pace count or how a pace works, you're basically going to put your non-dominant foot on the mark that you're going to be starting from, step off that non-dominant foot, and count when your dominant foot lands. It's every 2 steps. So 1, 2, 3, and so on until you get to the 100 meter mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk it from here to that end, count my paces. I'm going to count from that end to this end, count my paces. I'm going to add those two numbers together and divide them by 2 to get an average. So, I'll be right back. Alright, now that came to, like I was saying, I took my first pace count down to the far end. Now I'm going to do the same thing back. I'm going to take those two numbers, add them together, divide them by 2, and get an average for my pace count across flat ground. And before I forget, there's a couple of things I need to back up to. One, as you're doing this, you need to wear the pack you're going to be hiking with, whether it's your dake pack, rucksack, whatever the case may be. Not having this on is going to affect your pace count, so you need to have this on while you're doing it. 2, you need to do this on different types of terrain: flat ground, uphill, downhill, snow, mud, uneven terrain, the whole bit. And write each one of those down in your logbook or your notebook so you have those, because all those different terrains are going to affect that as well. So let's go ahead and we'll finish this second one. And there's so nobody runs over it and blows a tire. So all right, so I took a pace count in both directions, or both ways, and came up with 76 on both. So that's going to be my average. I'll write that down in my notebook so I have that information for future purposes. All right, welcome back. Like I was talking about earlier, we're going to be going over navigation skills today, and we're going to be talking about self-mapping, or using a compass without a topo map and forming our own map. So let's get started. All right, to explain how self-mapping is a benefit or how you can use it, say you're out on a hike like we are today. We're on an established trail. I've got my compass and notebook with me, but I don't have a topo map for this area, and I want to be able to wander off the trail or go off trail and navigate my way through something like this and be able to find my way back to where I started, which would be this little area over here. And this may be where I set up camp, or I'm working my way back to the trail so I can follow the trail back to my car to go home. But I want to navigate so I'm not getting lost out in this. So we'll get started by taking our first bearing. So we found a place, or we picked out a place. We want to step off the trail and we want to start navigating out off trail and exploring the area. For the sake of the video, I'm going to pick out this tree out in front of me. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to hold the compass up in front of me. I'm going to close my non-dominant eye, and I'm going to sight in on that object that I'm going to be navigating to. And again, in this case, it's that tree out in front of me. Okay, let's see if I can get this to work with the camera, if I can do this correctly. You look through that little V-notch in the bottom of the compass. You guys can see it there, and you aim that just like a gun sight at the object you're going to be traveling to. So, and this is where the mirror comes in handy. Now, if you look into the mirror, you can see the bezel ring. So what I'm going to do is, once I've sighted in on that object, I'm going to reach up and turn. I'm going to do it backwards, of course, until I get red in the shed. And this is why I like the mirror compasses. I can see that right in front of me. I can see the bearing. It's a more accurate way of sighting in. You'll see guys taking the plate compasses and they're doing this, trying to sight in on something. I prefer having the mirror to make that bearing that much more accurate. Now that I got my first bearing, I'm going to log that down in my notebook if I can find it. And this is, again, just a little simple waterproof notebook that I have in my pocket, or I have in my pack with my compass. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to list my forward azimuth to that tree. Next to that is notes. If I come across something of interest, whether it's a wild edible, a creek, a spring, whatever it may be, I'm going to enter that there. To the right of that, I'm going to enter my back azimuth. And let me back up a little bit to what I'm talking about. If you look at the tick mark in the front, that's where I determine my forward azimuth. So in this case, we're 128 degrees forward. When you look at the bottom tick mark, that's going to be your reverse azimuth. Let's see if I can say that coherently, which is going to be 318 degrees. Or, I'm sorry, 308 degrees. I need to go back to math class. So I'm going to log both of those into my logbook. Forward azimuth of 128. Back azimuth of 308. Now that I have this info wrote down, I'm going to take a pace count from where I'm at to that object, staying on the bearing that I took. So since that's the fixed object I'm shooting it to, that's where I'm going to stop. So alright, for the sake of the video, we're going to say this was 100 meters from our starting point. So once I get to this location, there's determine where I'm going from there. If I want to keep going on the same bearing, I can do so. All I'm going to do is continue on that bearing and continue on the same pace count, adding to that pace count as I go along. If I decide to change direction, say I want to stop here and shoot an azimuth to, say, that tree and it's out in the distance, I do the same thing. I pick up the compass, I aim off at that object, I put red in the shed, and then I log into my book my forward azimuth, my back azimuth, and I start a new pace count from this object to that one because now I'm changing directions. And another example, if I'm going to get to an area of interest, and I want to stop and explore that area around me, I'm going to mark it. This being my last stopping point or my last bearing, I pace myself to it. So now I want to go out and I want to explore the area around it. I'm going to mark this tree so I don't lose sight of it, as I'm going to come back to this one and then continue on from there. But what I'm going to do is find a brightly colored piece of material, and I'm going to tie it off somewhere. It probably isn't the best branch to be tying this to, but it'll work for the video. So you can see that there. Now I can move around this entire area. As long as I keep this in sight, I'm all right. I can go out and explore for whatever resources I may be looking for, water, wild edibles, wood, whatever. Then when I come back to this point, I simply remove it. In case a branch just breaks off. Move it, put it back in my pocket or pack, and then continue on to the next bearing, or the next point of interest. And I can do that all the way out and around, keeping track of my forward and reverse azimuths and my pace count, and then keeping notes on what I found while I was out there. Okay, now that we've basically completed our trip, or not completed it, but we've gotten to our last bearing or point of interest, we're going to figure out how to get from where we're at back to our starting point. And this is where the other tools I was showing you come in. You're going to take your stakes and your cordage. I got a little too much cordage. And we're going to pick a starting point on the ground somewhere, and we're going to stake that in with the cordage. Then we're going to go back to the bearings we took. In this case, it was 128 degrees at 100 meters. We're going to input that into the compass. We're going to set it down the edge of the string until we've oriented 128 degrees on the compass and on the ground. And we went 100 meters. Now on the ruler, I'm going to use an inch, 1 inch for every 25 meters traveled on the ground. Double check my bearing. Okay, we're good. And then on the ground, we're going to go a simple 4 inches. Too much leaf litter. So our starting point, then 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. We're going to put in another stake right there. This was our first, or this is our starting point, and this was our first stopping point. And we're simply just going to wrap the string around it and snug it up a little bit. Then we're going to find our second forward azimuth, which is 192 degrees. So we'll plug that into the compass and do the same thing we did first time. We're simply going to orient the compass until we get that bearing, or red is in the shed, and we have that bearing set. And we went 75 meters, or in this case, 3 inches on the compass. So I'm going to put another stake at 3 inches. Same thing, I'm going to wrap the string around that one. And you guys should be able to see what's working out here. Now we've got those bearings in. We're going to put our third, which is 222 degrees. We're going to input that into the compass. Get it lined up. So there we go, and we traveled 150 meters. So that's going to be 6 inches. We traveled 150 meters, so 6 inches on the ruler. So we're going to lay that out, 6 inches. Oops, back here. Put in another stake. And again, wrap the string around like we've done the other ones. If I can do this without it tangling up. Then we're going to come up to our last bearing that we recorded, which is going to be our 330 degrees. We're going to input that into the compass and then do the same thing. Orient it, get everything, compass and string both oriented to 330 degrees. And we traveled 75 meters, 3 inches on the ruler. Put in our last stake, wrap it around. Okay, and this is going to help us determine how to get back from where we started without having to shoot back azimuths that we have listed all the way back out. So what we do is simply run our string from our last point to our starting point. We're going to take a bearing on that, get that in there straight, which is going to be 20 degrees. We're going to list that down in our logbook, and then we're going to take a measurement to see how far. And we've got a pace count of about 200 meters. That should take us back to our starting point. And that's the gist of it. This is the short version. But this method, like I said, it works very well for adding to a map or self-mapping an area. I can take this information now and transpose that or transfer it to a piece of paper and then begin my own map. I can bring that back out with me and explore more and add to this existing map. So I hope this made sense. If you guys don't understand it, get a hold of me. We're going to do some more videos here in the near future expanding on this, as well as some map and compass videos, basic map and compass videos. You guys let us know what you want to see. Send us your questions and comments. We appreciate you watching. Again, hit that like and subscribe button, and see you guys next time. God bless.